amount of $132. So we would do $4,400 minus 132, and that equals $4,268, which we would receive, or Stein's Hardware would receive. Okay, so for May 9th, the accounts that would be debited would be cash, since we're receiving the $4,268 from the transaction on May 2nd. And another account that would be debited would be the sales discounts, and the sales discount is $132. So let's go down here, and once you input it, this is our sale. This is how much we're receiving in cash, $4,268, and this is how much they're receiving for their discount. And that all adds up to $4,400, and that's what our accounts receivable account would be credited, because we have received that amount minus the discounts. So that's why the accounts receivable is credited for the full $4,400. Okay, so now let's go up to our next transaction, which was on May 10th, and we actually paid Hilton Wholesale Supply in full minus our discounts. Now, we have to go back and see what the terms were for that purchase in order to calculate the discount. So we purchased the merchandise on the account for $8,000, and we paid this amount before the 10 days was up. So we are going to receive a 2% discount. Now, we also need to take into account the May 5th transaction, which we received credit from Hilton Wholesale Supply for merchandise returned on May 5th for $200. So first, let's take that return out of our amount that we're going to be needing to pay. So we do $8,000, which was the amount that we purchased the merchandise for. So here's the $8,000 we're taking. $8,000 minus the $200, which we returned the merchandise on May 5th. So that would equal $7,800 that we owe to Hilton Wholesale Supply. So since we owe this much, we also now need to take into account our discount that we're going to be receiving, because we paid this within the 10 days. So our discount is 2%, so we do $7,800 times 2%, or 0.02. And that would equal our discount. So let's go to the calculator over here and do $7,800 times 0.02, and that equals our discount. So we're receiving a $156 discount. So to journalize this transaction for us, we're going to we're going to be debiting the accounts payable, because we're actually paying this account off, so we don't need to have that in our transactions anymore. So we're going to be debiting the accounts payable by the full $7,800, because we don't take into account the discount on the debiting account for accounts payable. We are going to be taking into account the discount through a different account. So let's firstly go to our cash account, and that's the account that we're going to be paying. So in order to figure out what we're actually going to be paying to Hilton Wholesale Supply, we need to do one more calculation of finding out how much we owe. So in order to do that, we would do $7,800 because that's the amount we're actually going to be owing to Hilton Wholesale Supply minus the return. And we're going to be subtracting our discount that we're receiving. So that would equal the total amount that we're going to be paying to Hilton Wholesale Supply. So we do 7,800 minus 156, which equals our total that we're going to be paying to them. So that is $7,644. So we are going to be crediting our cash account because we're taking out the $7,644 of our account to pay Hilton Wholesale Supply. So here's cash, and our credit is $7,644. Now we also need to take into account the discount. Now instead of doing a sales discount, since we're not giving the discount, we're receiving the discount, we take the discount out of our merchandise inventory. So that's the account that's going to be credited for our discount that we're being received. Okay, now let's go to our next transaction, which is on May 11th. We purchased supplies for cash for $900. So we purchased supplies, so that's one keyword, and for cash. Instead of on an account like we did May 1st, we're purchasing this for cash. So our supplies inventory would increase, and that would be the account that would be debited by the $900 that we're purchasing. So our supplies would be debited and our cash would be credited because we're paying this $900. So that transaction and entry is going to be down here. So on May 11th, it shows that we are debiting our supplies account by $900. We're increasing the supplies. And we are decreasing our cash by $900, or crediting that account, because that's how much we paid for the supplies. Okay, now we'll go to May 12th. We purchased merchandise for cash of $2,700. So this is similar to the one we just did on May 11th. We purchased merchandise for cash, not an account, but for cash. So we're increasing our merchandise inventory by $2,700, and we're decreasing our cash, or crediting that account, by $2,700. So now let's put that into the entry. So our merchandise inventory is being increased or debited by $2,700, and our cash account is being decreased or credited by $2,700. Alright, next transaction is we received a $230 refund for return of poor quality merchandise from supplier on cash purchase. So the supplies that we purchased were returning because of poor quality merchandise. So the amount we're returning is $230 on our cash purchase. So that means that $230 is going back into our cash account. And our merchandise inventory is decreasing by that $230 because we're refunding that amount. So that entry would be on May 15th. We would increase or debit our cash by the amount we're returning, which is $230. And we are decreasing our merchandise inventory, or crediting that account, because we're taking out that poor quality merchandise and returning it for the $230 amount. Next entry is on May 17th. We purchased merchandise from Northern Distributors of $2,500 on terms 2-10 and N-30. So since we purchased this merchandise, we are increasing our merchandise inventory, and we are also increasing our accounts payable because this is the account terms. That's how you can tell that it's on an account and not from cash, because if it were cash, it would say we purchased this merchandise from Northern Distributors on cash, and it would not have the terms there. So that's how you can tell that we're purchasing this on an account. So, like we had on May 1st, our merchandise inventory is increasing by $2,500, and our accounts payable is also going to be credited for $2,500. So when you put in that entry on May 17th, our merchandise inventory is increasing or debiting by $2,500, and our accounts payable is also increasing or crediting by $2,500. Our next transaction is on May 19th, and we paid a freight on May 17th for our purchase of $250. So the freight cost $250 on our May 17th purchase. So since we're paying that out of pocket, that freight out of pocket, our cash account would be crediting or decreasing, and the freight goes into merchandise inventory, and that account would be debiting or increasing. So on May 19th, the entry would look like this. We would be increasing or debiting our merchandise inventory by $250 and decreasing or crediting our account of cash by $250. Okay, so for May 24th, we sold merchandise for cash of $5,400, and the cost of this merchandise sold was $4,020. So since we sold this merchandise, there's going to be a couple entries for this transaction. First, we're going to want to record the sale. So the sale of this merchandise would be recorded by increasing our cash account, because this is what we're receiving from the company that purchased this merchandise from us. So we're going to be increasing our cash account or debiting the cash account by $5,400 right here. And also we're going to be decreasing or crediting our merchandise inventory, because that $5,400 inventory is coming out of our merchandise inventory. So the first account to record the sale would look like this. Our cash would be increasing or debiting by $5,400, and our sales would be increasing or crediting by $5,400. Right there. Okay. The second part of this transaction is to record the costs of goods sold. So our cost of goods sold, or the cost of the merchandise, was $4,020. So our cost of goods sold would debit or increase by $4,020, and our merchandise inventory would decrease by $4,020 because we are taking out this from our merchandise inventory. So that would decrease, whereas our cost of goods sold would increase or debit. So that entry looks like this. To record, it stays right here, to record the cost of entry, we would increase cost of goods sold or debit that amount by $4,020, and we would decrease our merchandise inventory by $4,020. Okay, so just a couple more entries here. On the 25th, we purchased merchandise from Toolware Inc. for $800 on terms 3-10 and N-30. So since we purchased this merchandise from Toolware, we're increasing our merchandise inventory and also crediting our accounts payable by $800. So that entry would look like this.